many things in life are not planned. It's not, it's not like setting a target that I have to climb the Everest or something. I mean, your things evolve with time. There is not one single state or one single union territory in this country which has the same territory or the same name or the same configuration as it was in 1947. All the areas which are reflected in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, in the writings of Kalidas, for example, that represents the civilization in India. The fact remains that when the partition of India took place, nobody could anticipate that it will lead to such violence. Whether it's simple thing like gold prices shooting up or dollar coming down or this going up, we like to predict. We like to predict everything. So that is the first fallacy. That we think that we can predict.
Yeah.
So it is not that something was happening in India in the 1950s or in the 1960s. I mean, everywhere in the world something was happening.
Cold War.
There was Indochina was happening. There was the Vietnam issue that was happening.
My God.
There was a Bay of Pigs invasion. At any point of time in history, every 5-10 years, there is a churn. There's a little change.
Realignment
will keep on happening because that's the nature. It will happen to businesses, it will happen to families, it will happen to nations, it will happen to communities, it will happen to religions. In fact, when the Prime Minister met Mr. Biden, he was then 88 years old.
Okay.
And he called him Drishta Sahasra Chandra, which is the term used for a person who has seen 1,000 moons.
Okay.
And you see 1,000 moons when you are 88 years and 8 months. Satyug of Dwapar, of Treta, of Kali Yuga. All that is just one day in the life of Brahma.
One day.
And then hundreds of years in the life of Brahma. And that's just one kalpa. So, time has many ways.
Many constructs.
Many constructs. The best thing would be to do what you love.
Okay.
If you can't do that, then love what you do.
Okay.
There's a lot of pressure to, become a doctor or an engineer or an IAS officer or an IPS officer. If you don't enjoy doing it, this life cannot be wasted on doing things which you do not enjoy doing.
Hi guys, welcome to another very special episode of HypeCast. Today we have with us a very distinguished guest, a fatherly figure in my life, Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, retired Indian administrative officer, ex-director of Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration in Missouri, and an author of 2 great books, We the People of the States of Bharat, The Making and Remaking of India's Internal Boundaries, which was published in 2022, and The Great Conciliator, Lal Bahadur Shastri and the Transformation of India, published this year in 2025. And he's also the chief patron of Value of Words, an international literary festival held every year all over the country. So, welcome, sir. Welcome to HypeCast. How are you?
Thank you, Nilanjan. I'm really finding it very nice. It's very good. I mean, the room is it's got a lot of energy in it.
Okay.
I'm glad it's got the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna and it's got some very modern posters. So you've tried to
amalgamate both, because we have to amalgamate both worlds. We have to amalgamate both worlds.
Yeah.
And I'm a little emotional. That's why because I would want Dad to be here as well, as we know. But he's watching over us as usual. So, sir, you were born in Kapurthala.
Yes.
Okay.
That's public knowledge.
Public knowledge. I'm born in Kapurthala. 985 IAS, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, where was your first posting?
I joined Purulia as an assistant magistrate. That was for my training.
Okay.
But you would not know, but many of the senior listeners would recall that was the time of the GNLF agitation.
Okay.
That was the time when GNLF agitation was at its peak. And therefore, when we had come for a settlement training to Alipurdwar, at that time, there were hardly any people who were willing to go to Darjeeling district. And there was an exodus of people. I mean, even officers were feeling a bit insecure. So at that time, the then district magistrate of Darjeeling, T.P. Patro, he had come to the settlement camp and said, "Who all of you are brave enough to come to Darjeeling?" I said, "Of course, I'm brave enough to come to Darjeeling." So I very rare for a training district to be changed, but my training district was changed from Purulia. to Kalimpong, and because the BDO of Kalimpong had left, had to leave under some difficult circumstances. So I was made the BDO of Kalimpong early on in my probation days. And that's how my first posting was in Kalimpong. First as BDO Kalimpong and then as SDO Kalimpong.
Okay. So for a IAS officer, after his or her training, is that the first posting?
No, actually the BDO stint is something that we do within our training period.
Okay.
But I had a slightly longer period as BDO during training because there was no BDO of Kalimpong at that time.
Okay.
And of course, after training, I got posted as SDO of Kalimpong.
Okay.
So I was assistant magistrate in Purulia and Darjeeling districts, BDO of Kalimpong, and then SDO of Kalimpong.
So how was that experience? I mean, the location is very beautiful.
It was a very
surrounded by mountains.
Great experience because we were tackling the GNLF agitation at that point of time. And it involved a lot of raw courage.
Okay.
It involved understanding a degree of nuance. It involved a lot of coordination with the Central Armed Police Forces. It involved keeping the morale of the government of West Bengal employees high. It involved maintaining a dialogue with the people of Kalimpong, required coordination with the army authorities, and it also required, reaching outreach to the students, to teachers, to community leaders.
Try and cool it down.
To cool it down and to understand what the real issues are.
But that was your main at that point of time.
At that point of time, you see, the mandate was that you should keep the flag flying.
Yes.
Because for a long time, even the flag could not be flown on the SDO's office.
Okay.
So I remember going up and flying the flag.
Okay.
So that was a great moment, because the flag had not been flown for quite some time.
Yeah.
So one had to go, and so my task was just to keep the flag flying, And almost everything had come to a standstill. We had 40 days ban, we had alternate days ban. So it was a very tough situation.
Was it kind of Kashmir during the early 90s?
I would not. No, it was not Kashmir of the 1990s, because in Kashmir the Pakistan factor has always been there.
Okay.
You see, here in Darjeeling, the issue was that they were saying that we want a separate state within the Union of India.
Okay.
Now, it's a very important distinction to be made. You see, in part of the demand of the terrorists of Kashmir way back in the 80s and 90s was aligned towards out of India, Whereas Gorkhaland never wanted an independent state. They wanted to be out of Bengal. So there's a lot of difference between these two agitations.
Okay.
So that's a major difference. At no point of time did they want to become part of Nepal. No point of time did they want to be out of India. They wanted a separate state/union territory within the Union of India.
So that is the main difference between both the agitations.
And also another factor was that the leadership of the GNLF came from ex-army men.
Okay.
You see, because the recruitment of people in the Indian Army from amongst the Nepalese/Gorkhas of Darjeeling is much higher. There hasn't been that sort of recruitment to the Indian Army or the Indian police forces from ethnic Kashmiris or from people who belong to the Kashmir Valley. So these are two major differences. So while it was a major challenge because we did not want the troops in the Indian Army to be affected by this agitation, the fact was that it was like a grievance which could be resolved. They wanted to be heard, and so once the matter was heard. And of course, there was violence, because violence, once it starts in the state, has to respond. The state cannot accept the fact that law and order situation breaks down completely. So of course, police and the CRPF and the BSF had to be deployed to aid the civil administration.
So, sir, from there, like the beginning of your career, you handled huge crisis, because as you just now said. So as the years went by, you went to different posts, promotion happened, and then you became even higher up in the way. When did you decide that you want to write book?
Well, I have always been writing.
Okay.
In the sense that while in service, one could not write full-length books, but I've always been doing book reviews. I've always been writing articles and columns, for various newspapers, and enjoyed talking, giving talks on the radio, and, so all these things continued. But in order to write a book, you require a lot of time, and you require time at hand. And that actually happened during the COVID years, and I was still at the academy.
Okay.
So I was at the academy, but because of COVID, the load was much less.
Much
We
less.
did not have those many physical courses. So that's how it started. And after that, it's been going on.
It's been going on.
Yeah.
And because what I have seen from my younger age, what I've seen, that it's always, the books has always been a very...
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember a time when I was not reading some book.
Some book or the other. Always reading.
Always reading.
So, during your time as a director of the institute, that time you could, because as you said, COVID.
No, first year, I did not have that sort of time, but year 2, when the physical classes stopped and most classes were online and all activity had come to a bare minimum. So I got a lot more time to read books in the library and to issue books from the library and read at home.
So this is after the candidates have passed the interview round?
Yes, after they have been selected finally. So the interview round is one of the inputs. The marks of the interview are one set of marks.
Okay.
But then the mains examination is there. So most of it depends on the mains examination.
Okay.
So after the final selection list is made, then the officers come to us for training.
So what is the duration of that training?
The foundation course is for about 3.5 months.
Okay.
And then it is followed by the professional phase course for the IAS officers at the academy, and the other services go to their own academy.
Okay.
For instance, the police officers would go to the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel Police Academy at Hyderabad. The income tax would go to Nagpur. The audit and account would go to Yarrows at Shimla.
What about IFS?
Foreign service, they go to the Sushma Swaraj Institute for Foreign Affairs.
Okay. So they have. So it is the specialization happens after that 3 months.
After the foundation course. So the foundation course is the time when we want everyone to get together.
Okay.
And we want people to build friendships for their lifetime, because at the end of the day, governance is not just about civil administration. It's also about policing. It's also about GST realization. It's also about borders. It's about railways. It's about post and telegraphs. It's about everything. So that's the entire complex which
happened. So do you remember any anecdote from your interview round?
Yes. See, the first thing which happened was that I was then working for the Economic Times, and the news headline said RBI cuts interest rates by half.
Okay.
And so fortunately, I read that paper in the morning, and the sub-editor had forgotten to add 0.5%. So the headline was RBI cuts interest rates by half, but that percent or the PC was not there, or that sign was not there. So the first thing was say how can RBI cut interest rates by half? Just that it was the printer's level. So that sort of set the tone in a very friendly manner, and said ha 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 ha. So you all make mistakes. You know how much confusion you've created. Do you know how much creation you've created? I said I wasn't on the duty last night, so I'd taken off to prepare for this interview. So it became a very friendly sort of a thing. And then somebody had asked me, about how do you solve the Assam problem.
Okay.
I said, well, sir, with all humility at my command, if all of you senior people have not been able to find a resolution, how do you expect me, a rookie youngster, to tell you about it? And another interesting thing was, they said, you're already working, so why do you want to join the civil services? So I said, look, it's a challenge with my father. My father feels that, it's important to crack this exam because he's not very impressed with my lead articles in the Economic Times. So it's more of a challenge to myself. It's a challenge with my father's, so I want to crack it.
So and before the interview, were you tensed or you were very relaxed?
Well, you see, one thing is that, and which I keep advising a lot of other young people, is that you see, if you're already working, and if you're working in a job which is reasonably okay, then you're not so tense. You see, for a person who's not working at all and is looking to the IAS as the first job, there is a lot of tension. In fact, I was much more tense, much more excited when I went for my interview to Bombay for the Times of India training school. You see, my first job was as a trainee journalist in the Times of India.
Okay.
And I remember that was a very tense moment. I was very tense at that time, on whether I'll make it to the as a trainee journalist or not, because that is the first job. And there's something about the first job. You're more tense. Once you're already in a job, then it's good if you make it. But if you don't make it, you're not on the road. And you're not going back to your parents. You have a backup. So I think, and that's what I keep telling everyone. It's very important to have a backup plan. You start doing something, whether it's a teaching job or it's a bank job or it's any job. Take up a job after you're 21, 22. After you finish your graduation or your post-graduation, enroll yourself in a PhD program, but do not have nothing else to fall back upon, because then the pressure is very high. The pressure is very
because I see a lot of people are only doing that, day in day out there in Mujherjee in Delhi. Continuously they are studying.
There's a lot of pressure that happens. You see, because when that is the only thing on your mind, then I would expect there would be a lot of pressure. So I fortunately have not faced these pressures, because when I applied for the Times of India, I was still doing my master's in history.
Okay.
Doing a master's in history, and I got my first job 3 days before I was 21. So I've not faced the crisis of unemployment or the crisis of having to live off your parents after a certain age.
Because a lot of people, I think they face that. They say ki this is the only thing that I have. Because maybe the person is from a very backward village in Jharkhand, he has nothing. Maybe electricity is also not there. So that thing comes up So after this distinguished career in the Indian Administrative Service, what thought provoked you to write your first book, and why was it only about this?
No, you see, this again, let me tell you, see, Nilanjan, many things in life are not planned. It's not, it's not like setting a target that I have to climb the Everest or something. I mean, your things evolve with time. I mean, for instance, the Shastri book came about because when I had gone to the academy, when I joined as the director of the academy, I found that there were not too many books on Lal Bahadur Shastri.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, because there were not too many books on Lal Bahadur Shastri, I felt it's my duty to. I felt it's important for me to capture the essence of his life and at least talk to some people who are still around, those who have worked with him, those who are around him. And similarly, what happened as far as this first book is concerned is that we'd gone to the Survey of India office in Dehradun, and we were looking at the maps of India. And survey techniques in our time were with Kunta chain, and we had the theodolite survey. Now all that is redundant because you have that satellite map imagery and things. But still, for historical reasons, we try to see how it used to happen in earlier time. So while I was at the Survey of India office, I saw the maps of India. I saw all the maps of India that have ever been produced, because Survey of India, which incidentally was Survey of Bengal, the head office of Survey of India was Bengal, because Bengal was, and Calcutta was the capital, the sort of...
at that time, the center of everything was Calcutta.
So that's when I started looking at the various maps of India, and I saw how the map of India in 1947 was so different from the map of India in 2020, and then I started, comparing map of 47 with the map of 50, with the map of 52, 54, 56, 60. So I then started, I got all these maps, and then I started seeing what changes were made between the first map and the second map and the third map, and one realized that this has also been a gradual process. Nilanjan, what used to happen was that the Survey of Bengal, as it used to be called in those days, he used to prepare a map of our Indian positions and keep it behind the desk of the Governor General.
Okay.
Now, at that time, the 1796, the only Indian positions which were there were this area, Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, this area. This was part of the Bengal presidency. And then there were areas in Bombay and Chennai and Madras, So, but what would happen is that every 5 years, every 10 years, the British would take more territories. So, Secunderabad would become part of British India. Then Awadh would become part of British India. So gradually, what started happening was that the map, the Indian positions behind the Governor General's desk, that kept expanding. And the Survey of Bengal was mandated to produce a map every time that territory changed. Whenever you had a subsidiary alliance with any one of the native states, any one of the Indian states, so that used to get reflected. So that's how the evolution of cartography in India started, and that's what I started realizing, that from 1947, in fact, there is not one single state or one single union territory in this country which has the same territory or the same name or the same configuration as it was in 1947. I mean, the Punjab of 1947 is not the Punjab of today. The Bengal of 47 is not the Bengal of today. Every state is different. There is not one state in the country.
Even Bihar got divided into two.
No, Bihar, that was much earlier. Bihar, that of course much later, because Bihar is now Bihar and Jharkhand. I thought you were mentioning about the earlier 1911 when Bihar and Odisha were created out of. Yes, Bihar is now Bihar and Jharkhand. Madhya Pradesh is now Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. So every state in the country, every single state in the country has seen a change.
I was watching a podcast which you had done earlier, shout out Raj Shamani, where you explained about the civilizational map of India and I think the political map of India. So what's the difference between the two?
You see, one of the things that you got to understand is that a civilization is not bounded by a political geography.
Okay.
You see, a civilization, let's say the Indic civilization, in which you'll have all the Indic religions which grew in India. So that territory would be anywhere. So you go to Nepal, for example. The civilizational values of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Upanishads, or the prayer traditions that happen in Pashupatinath, are the same as they happen in India, but it's a different country altogether. Right? Similarly, in Tibet, there is a continuation of the Buddhist tradition that happens there. So one is the civilizational aspect of a nation, and I would think that all the areas which are reflected in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, in the writings of Kalidas, for example, that represents the civilizational India.
Okay.
But the political India is the India that India has inherited, or the India which is defined in Article 1, Schedule 1 of a constitution, which very clearly lays down that this is what India is.
Okay.
And that this is the territory of India. These are the states of India. This is the territory of India. So the constitution of India, and when all of us as IAS officers, or when all India service officers, or when the army officers, when they take oath, when the president, the prime minister, everybody takes oath, they take an oath, or they solemnly affirm that they will uphold the constitution of India. So the territory that is defined by the constitution of India in Article 1, Schedule 1 is the territory of India as far as I am concerned.
Okay. So, and from 1947 till now, has that changed?
That's changed marginally, because when Sikkim was incorporated into India, and that's 50 years ago, so there's been a change. So India has expanded. We've settled the issue of enclaves and exclaves with Bangladesh.
Okay.
So that happened because the land border agreement with which was passed in 2015. So minor changes there, but major change has been the inclusion of Sikkim within the Indian Union.
So do you think, as a lot of people discuss it in a lot of various forums about the chicken's neck, which we are sitting right now. Now, when Article 1, Schedule 1 was being written about India, so at that point of time, there was nothing called the chicken necks, I guess.
No, because at that point of time, East Pakistan had not been created. At that point of time, all this country, you see, and the fact remains that that when the partition of India took place, nobody could anticipate that it will lead to such violence, that it will lead to the tensions and the problems were always there, but nobody could imagine the extent that it would take place. And in fact, when violence started, it was an unprecedented violence, especially in Punjab. In Punjab, there was one, it was in one big volcanic eruption.
Yes.
But in the east, it has not been one volcanic eruption. It's been a series of small eruptions which continue. So both are bad. It's difficult to decide which one is worst.
But both are bad.
Both are bad. So at that point of time, it was one could not have, and you see, it's very very easy to blame people in the past, because it's very difficult to anticipate what would have happened.
Absolutely.
Very difficult to anticipate what would have happened, what could have happened.
Like we can, which I completely agree, because we right now sitting in 2025, we personally were not physically present at that point of time. What are the practical...
See, even if one is present at that particular point of time, it is very... You see, some of the major fallacies of all human existence. One is the fallacy of predictability. It's a great fallacy. I mean, we all like to predict the future. We all like to think that, if this is the thing, whether it's simple thing like gold prices shooting up or dollar coming down or, this going up, we like to predict. We like to predict everything. So that is the first fallacy, that we think that we can predict. A second fallacy is the fallacy that we can control, the third is that we can control the behavior of others, which is even more difficult. So these are some of the fallacies with which, but the point is that without these, it is difficult again to live, because all your life you will have to base your current decisions on past experience and what you expect to happen. So we never thought, at least the leadership at that time did not think that the relationship would be so acrimonious, but it did become very acrimonious, and so especially in the eastern side where all the, you see, on the west side also what happened was that the natural trade flows with Afghanistan and Central Asia, those broke down. But what happened was that because there was a lot of hinterland here in the rest of the country, and Punjab was essentially an agrarian state. So
still is, I guess.
Still is. But at that time it was
much more.
agrarian.
Yes.
So it was able to absorb that shock. But here the disruption has been towards other parts of our own country, because at the Atari-Wagah border that ended. But here what happened was that beyond East Bengal, there is the entire Ashtalakshmi.
Yes.
The northeast is now called the Ashtalakshmi. Right, so beyond that is Tripura, beyond that is Mizoram, beyond that is Arunachal, Assam, and all these places.
Yeah.
So all our conventional routes, all our conventional railways, our conventional ferry services, riverine transport, all of that broke down. So the economic impact and the psychological impact much more here, because see, nobody had to go from Amritsar to Kabul. Very few takers, but people who were traveling from, say, Agartala to Calcutta, tremendous change. People who were traveling from, so the entire northeast, it got suddenly cut off, right? So this is a very long detour that had to be taken. That had to be taken. Otherwise, distances from even Calcutta to Dhaka was not very much. But for a long time, we did not even have a direct connect between Calcutta and Dhaka. And even now, the amount of travel that can actually take place is much more, the potential is much higher than where we are at the moment.
So after independence, when all of the princely states one by one were, seceding to India, is the word seceding, am I right?
No, they were, secede is not the right word. What says that they were getting integrated.
Into India. Now, the last two states to do was Hyderabad and Kashmir.
Yeah, Jammu
right?
Kashmir. Yeah.
Jammu Kashmir. So, why did these two states, why did Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel face issues with these two states more than the others?
Two things. One, that these were the largest states in the country.
Okay.
There were only 5 states in the country, which were 21 gun salute states. I mean, left to itself, Jammu, Kashmir and Hyderabad were very big states. I mean, the Nizam of Hyderabad was the richest man of the world in the 1920s, right? So it was a very powerful. These are all. I mean, if in Europe, a land size of this nature would be an independent country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the things which a lot of people do not realize is that other than one of the factors was that Jinnah was not very comfortable either with Jammu Kashmir or with Hyderabad.
Okay.
See, Jinnah also was not very keen to have either the whole of Jammu Kashmir or the whole of Hyderabad, because there were 2 major challenges to his leadership. One came from Sheikh Abdullah.
Okay.
Because Sheikh Abdullah was a very popular leader, very, very popular leader. And Sheikh Abdullah was a popular leader who was very close to Subhash Chandra Bose, for example. So when Subhash Chandra Bose was the president of the Indian National Congress in the Haripura session, in 1937 or 38, I think 37, that was the time when Bose propped is not the right word, supported the leadership of Sheikh Abdullah to become the head of the All India States People's Congress, which is also called the Praja Parishad, because while the Congress was operating in those areas of the country which were under British rule, for the Indian states, the mass movement there was called the Praja Parishad.
Okay.
So that was it, and Sheikh Abdullah was a very popular leader. In fact, he converted his Muslim conference into the National Conference.
Okay.
He was a very secular leader.
This is Farooq Abdullah's father?
Farooq Abdullah's father.
Okay. Omar Abdullah's grandfather, the present CM of, yeah. Okay.
So, they were both these kings, both these Rajas, Maharajas they were toying with the idea of independence.
Okay.
And they did try to assert and think, but you see, after the lapse of paramountcy, that is after the British, the Indian Independence Act, you see, the 1935 Act, they were trying to create a provision where the princes could be part of a loose Indian federation. But after 1947, the Britishers said that their paramountcy is over, and the states should either join India or join Pakistan, right? And we had this interesting situation where the Maharaja of Jammu Kashmir was Maharaja Hari Singh. His population was largely Muslim, but the Muslim population's most important leader was Sheikh Abdullah, who was secular and who was more inclined to India, because India was secular and India believed in land reform. India believed in socialism, as against Pakistan, which was not secular, which was not socialist at that point of time.
So these 2 states, obviously, we all know the history, what happened after that. So after all of this happened, but India was always in kind of a turmoil at that point in time. The Sino-Indian War happened, and then the 71 happened, creation of Bangladesh. So all of this.
See, Nilanjan, I like to tell you that, you see, everywhere, in every corner of the world, something or the other keeps happening.
Yeah.
So it is not that something was happening in India in the 1950s or in the 1960s. I mean, everywhere in the world something was happening.
Cold War.
I mean, there was Indochina was happening. There was the Vietnam issue that was happening.
Vietnam, my God.
There was a Bay of Pigs invasion. So every 5 years, every 10 years.
Like right now, whatever's going on.
Whatever is going on, both in Gaza, in Ukraine.
Yeah.
In Africa, the Boko Haram has again become active.
Very active.
So at any point of time, in history, every 5-10 years, there is a churn. There's a little change.
Realignment
will keep on happening, because that's the nature. It will happen to businesses, it will happen to families, it will happen to nations, it will happen to communities, it will happen to religions. I mean, who could have thought, a few centuries ago, that the Catholics and the Protestants would have such fight? Who would have thought that these issues would get resolved? I mean, so, a lot of things that we see in our current that we see currently or in contemporary time. When you look back, you realize that crusades happened. So many things that happened in the past.
At that point of time, the Council of Nicaea, where they discussed about Jesus and his divinity and all of that. So, which you're absolutely right. Like past, if you say 1 or 2,000 years.
See, past again. You can look at the chronology. You can look at history from many points. In fact, as I mentioned in the preface to my book, you see that we the people of the States of Bharat, we count our life in decades.
Okay.
6 decades, 7 decades, 8 decades. Very few people will get into their 90th year. In fact, when the Prime Minister met Mr. Biden, he was then 88 years old.
Okay.
And he called him Drishta Sahasra Chandra, which is the term used for a person who has seen 1,000 moons.
Okay.
And you see 1,000 moons when you are 88 years and 8 months.
Okay.
So so it's a nice. So every day you can actually learn a new word, a new terminology. So that was something. But the point was that 8 decades, 9 decades, we do not look at life beyond this. We normally would think that, all right, 8 decades is a long time in the history of an individual. 8 decades is nothing in the life of an institution. I mean, there are universities which have been there since, the 12th century, 13th century. I mean, the Merton College, for example, it's been there since,
Nalanda.
Nalanda came, it went out of circulation, it's come back again. So things have, you have individual lifetimes, you have institutional lifetimes, you have nations' lifetime, you have civilizational lifetime, you have geological lifetimes.
Okay, yes.
When you look at the lifetime of the Himalayas, when you look at the concept of yoga, when you look at the concept of kalpa, one day in the life of Brahma, for example, the times of Satyuga, of Dwapar, of Treta, and of Kali Yuga, all that is just one day in the life of Brahma.
One day.
And then hundreds of years in the life of Brahma, and that's just one kalpa. So, time has many ways of looking
many constructs.
Many constructs. So
many constructs.
You and I are looking at time more in the nature of a human.
And we are very minuscule in the grand scheme of things.
So we are minuscule, and yet we are everything.
Yes.
So that's the beauty of life.
I want to slowly segue into your book or your research on our ex-Prime Minister, Honorable Lal Bahadur Shastri ji. As you all know, he shares the same birthday as our father of the nation. Now, we all know about Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and that point in time the war was going on. On your journey in this research, how much of research did you do? Because I've not read the book, I'm still asking you, on his passing away, because that's very unfortunate. It's a very grey area.
You see, point is that when you only talk about his passing, we are missing out on his very rich life.
Yeah, that I want to know.
That is why I decided not to touch that chapter at all. And in any case, I'm a bureaucrat and a scholar, administrator. I mean, I'm not a journalist. I will not go into that because I'll go by whatever has been documented, whatever is available in the public domain, and whatever I could get by talking to his family members and to those of his contemporaries who were there with him.
What was his way of administration?
I would say his way of administration was more in the nature of a consensus.
Okay.
And that's why the title Great Conciliator. See, what I've tried to show in fact, when you try to trace the history of a person like Lal Bahadur Shastri, you have to go into the space, you need to go into that time. So what I have tried to do is I've tried to capture the space and time of Mughal Sarai as Deen Dayal Upadhyay Nagar was
at that time,
right? So I've tried to look at what Mughal Sarai was at the turn of the century. So I've traced the history of Mughal Sarai, and at that time the railway colonies had come up, the history of the railways. So how his maternal grandfather, who was then a teacher and an English teacher, and later headmaster of the government high school, of the railway school. Then his uncle, who was also there in that school. Then how he grew up there. Then his move to Benares, his favorite teacher, Nishkameshwar Mishra. Then the movement from there to the Kashi Vidyapith. The influence of Mahatma Gandhi on his life. The how Benares as a city shaped him. How Benares city was being shaped. About the Nagari Prachar, how the Congress sessions are being held there, So this is how I try to look into the history of, so I try to reconstruct the life in Benares at that time, his life in Benares. Then he moved on to Lahore, of all the places, because Lala Lajpat Rai had set up the Servants of People Society, just as Gokhale had set up the Servants of India Society in Pune. So Shastri ji moved to Lahore. And then by some coincidence, Purushottam Das Tandon, who had been invited by Lal Lajpat Rai to become the general manager of the Punjab National Bank, he took over as the head of the Servants of People Society after the death of Lal Lajpat Rai. And Tandon decided to move the headquarters from Lahore to Allahabad. Now that's again a very interesting change, because that is what put Shastriji in Allahabad, and both as an SOPS volunteer and as a volunteer of the Congress. And that's how, Sardar Patel, that's how he got close to both Nehru and Purushottam Das Tandon, tried to conciliate there. And that's how, he got involved with the Congress movement more, got involved, went to jail, on 2 or 3 occasions. So when you write a biography, you also learn about the various campaigns that were being carried out.
Or his way of life at that point of time.
His way of life has always been very simple.
Very simple. Very simple.
Very, very simple. And he practiced what he preached. I think that's the very important.
And he looked up to Mahatma Gandhi like.
Oh yes. So, absolutely.
And he was a true blood Gandhian all the way through.
Absolutely. I would think that he was more Gandhian than many of his contemporaries.
So what was your takeaway after this whole journey of writing about his life? I'm not talking about
that. My takeaway from his life is that it's very important to do empirical research before coming to any conclusion.
Okay.
You see, none of his decisions was knee-jerk. In fact, the entire complex of MSP or NDDB or CSCP or FCI or NEFED and all these things, they would be traced back to the Congress Agrarian Commission report of 1935, of which he was the principal architect, because he was the secretary of that committee. And as we all know, that it's the youngest and the junior most person who is asked to write the report.
Yeah.
So you see, everything that he did was after very meticulous research. So all his views on most subjects, and when he did not know much about the subject, he would say, I don't know much about the subject. But if he knew about the subject, if he was asked to, for instance, when he was doing the rail budget, he read everything about railways which Mahatma Gandhi had written about the railways. Mahatma Gandhi had written a book called Third Class in the Railways. So Mahatma Gandhi had about 20 essays on the railways. So he would read up about that. He would read up everything about the subject that he was asked to speak on or write on.
It was completely research based.
Research, yes, you can say research based, empirical at least. So he was not a person who would make very loud statements. He was not a person who would hype up things. He was a person who was very grounded, very granular,
and
very practical. And so he would not have, unlike many people who have very grand ambitions and make grand announcements, he would make very specific statements to specific issues. I think that was his USP. And he was a great institution builder, very quick at taking decisions. I won't use the word very quick at taking, he would take decisions after listening to
all
parties, and then he would, you see, one of the things which I learned from after researching was to see that what happens when you start listening. When you first listen to an adversary's point of view carefully, you do not agree with him, but you realize that there is something that there is in him. There's something that he is trying to say. Second time when you listen to him, you think that maybe there is some merit in what he is saying. And in the process, you're also conveying to him what you are wanting to convey. So over a series of conversations, at least there is some scope to dialogue. There is some scope on which you can begin to create if not a consensus, at least a meeting ground. And that's how the 3-language formula came up. That's how, he solved the problem of the Kachar district because Kachar was a Bengali-speaking district in Assam. That's how he set up those commissions which finally led to these smaller states. He was also trying to resolve the Nagaland issue, which I've just learned after the book was, because after the book has been published, a lot of people have given me a lot more insight into his life.
So can we wait for another second edition of the book?
Yes, certainly. In fact, fortunately, the second edition is already out. The first lot was sold. And so
I'm saying a second volume.
Yes,
a second volume, sequel.
Yeah, sequel Yes, sir.
Because we live in the age of sequels now.
Yeah, okay. Yes, certainly. Certainly. But
So-
you know, what happens is that I get involved in so many other interesting things also. But yes, I certainly look forward to this.
Now I want to segue to value of words.
Hmm.
So, how was the inception of this value of words?
The value of words started more in the nature of a conversation. You know, in fact, your father was also involved in many of these conversations. The idea was to see that festivals were happening dime a dozen in this country, including in Kolkata. And what I noticed was, you know, that you have a celebrity, you have a controversy, and you have a sponsor, and you can do a literature festival. So that's what was happening. So you get a controversial subject, you get a set. So I wanted to make it slightly different. I wanted it to be theme based. I wanted to be based on authors who are doing contemporary writings. I wanted to shift the focus from celebrity. I mean, a celebrity author could also come, but an author is being invited because he's done a great book, not because he or she is a celebrity.
So, any authors listening, please, I'll share the link. Can send in your book and be part of it.
So, you know, what happens is that, therefore, what the USP of value of words is that we do not focus on celebrity authors. Celebrity authors will come in if they've written a good book. But if they haven't written a good book in that last calendar year,
and just because of their celebrity, they're not going to come in.
they're not going to make it. So the selection of our authors is based on the Value of Words Book Awards.
Okay.
So every year we get about 500-600 nominations in 8 categories, and the best books in these categories are then longlisted and then shortlisted, and then it goes to the winner of the last year.
Okay.
To do the final adjudication. So the jury is also moving. I have no role in the selection of books.
So you have no role in the jury.
I have no role in the jury. My
Okay.
role is limited to ensuring that books come to WOW, that they are longlisted, because longlisting is done on the basis of reviews that have been published, and on the basis of how how the libraries' issues are, how the sales have been. So it gives us a rough idea over the long list. And then the long list is given to the winner of the last year's award in that category.
Okay. Finally, I want you to give a message to our age group people who are entrepreneurs trying to appear for examination.
First of all, what is the meaning of age?
People who have seen less moons than you. People who have seen less full moons than you. Okay.
So I think, okay.
I want you to give a very short, as we know, life has become faster. Everyone's going for social validation, wanting validation from people who they don't know. And in this rat race, everybody's running. Okay. So, as we were discussing off camera regarding what's going on. So, how will a person who has seen less full moons than you, because you've seen life through various lenses in your distinguished career and writing, and as the more and more people you keep on meeting all over the place, what motivation would you give people like us so that our mind is sane and we are in the right state of mind to be in peace with what we're doing?
The most important thing is to discover what is it that you love most.
Okay.
And you should love what you do. The next best thing is the best thing would be to do what you love.
Okay.
If you can't do that, then love what you do.
Okay. That's good.
So, one should not get into anything if one is not enjoying it. There's a lot of pressure to, become a doctor or an engineer or an IAS officer or an IPS officer. If you don't enjoy doing it, this life cannot be wasted on doing things which you do not enjoy doing.
Okay.
If your profession and your passion can be one, that's ideal. That is ideal. But if that does not work, then the best is to develop a passion for whatever you're doing.
Okay.
So if we can get into this, then life becomes very beautiful. Then and all validation must come from within. you must be satisfied. You must be satisfied. You must feel content. So happiness is not a word which I give a lot of emphasis on, because you cannot be always happy. I mean, this is a myth. You cannot be happy all the time, but you can be equanimous. You can strive for equity, equanimity, and a mental bearing. And the realization that everything is fleeting. Everything is fleeting. So you have to be centered. I think the message would be to be more centered, and to not seek validation outside of yourself.
Just seek
if you've done the best podcast, you've done it. It does not matter how many people listen to us. What matters is, did you put your heart and soul in it?
Correct.
Did you enjoy it?
Correct.
Did you enjoy talking to me?
Yes.
Did I enjoy talking to you?
Yes.
Well, if we have done 10 on 10 on this, the rest does not matter.
This
is also the core message of the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
That you must invest yourself in the karma that you do. Whatever you are doing, you do, be the best in that. I mean, if you are the archer, be the best archer. If you are a chef, be the best chef. If you are the driver, be the best driver. If you are a traffic constable who's managing traffic, be the best in that. So whatever you are doing, be the best in that, or at least try to be the best in that, and seek enjoyment in the act itself, rather than in what the fallout of that is, because that is not in any case in our control.
Yes.
So
as you said about the fallacies in the. So it was a great podcast, sir, and I would want to do more podcasts with you whenever again you're back in town.
Certainly.
And it was a great experience. A lot of memories are coming back and stuff. So guys, like, share and subscribe, and the links for the 2 books, the links for Value of Words will be in the description below. Buy a lot of books, everyone, and keep reading. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you.